Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel where I talk about movies. And the movie I want to talk about today comes from 1946. This is Beauty and the Beast, directed by Jean Cocteau, starring Jean Marais and Josette Day. And I do not have a copy of Beauty and the Beast. It is in the Criterion collection, currently out of stock, no doubt because of the recent Criterion flash sale. It is available in Blu-ray. In the collection and on the channel, it is streaming with many of the supplements that you can get on the physical release. And I'm doing this in response to a request, a very good request, a recommendation from one of my loyal subscribers. I was not brought up on fantasy and fairy tales, so my connection to fantasy and fairy tales has always been rather limited. As a kid, I was reading the Hardy Boys instead of fairy tales. But this story even kind of transcends the fairy tale. It's not really the Walt Disney version, although I've never seen the Walt Disney version. I've seen snippets from it. This is a movie maybe not so much made for children as made for adults. It's a familiar story. It's based on a 18th century story, French short story. I don't know if it was a short story or a novel. That Cocteau changes a bit, and according to the commentary that's included on with the supplements, and you can listen to the commentary on the channel. This is a story that Jean Marais brought to Cocteau as a vehicle that both of them, Marais and then Cocteau, fell in love with the idea of doing this story. And he does change it. In the commentary, we're told in positive directions. In fact, one of the nice surprises at the climax, the goddess Diana appears in statues at the Beast Castle, all come alive. She sort of acts as the Deus Ex Machina, and there's other changes, and they do sound that they do improve on the original novel. I have no idea how this compares to the Disney adaptations. The story is a simple one. It sort of starts out like Cinderella, where Belle has two evil sisters, not stepsisters as in Cinderella. Her family has been wealthy, but her father who's engaged in trade. The ships have not returned, and now they're near penniless. Belle does all the work. The two sisters are still living in a world of a luxury that's soon going to disappear. The father hears that a ship has arrived, and now their wealth can be resumed, but when he gets to the town, the port town, he realizes that all his creditors in that town have dissipated all the gains he was expecting. So he's still poor. On his way back to home to tell the sad news, he can't even afford to stay in a hotel, so he has to travel at night. As he's traveling through a foggy night, these branches magically open up, and we enter the world of fantasy, where he arrives at this secluded castle. It's full of magic. When he enters the castle, the candelabras on the wall are moved about by arms sticking out of the wall, and then he before he left for his trip for hopefully the riches that were arriving with the boat, Belle has asked for a rose. So he's about to leave, the father's about to leave this castle, and he picks a rose. Well, this is a mortal blow, a mortal sin that he has committed to the beast, and the beast occurs, and only if he sends one of his daughters back to the castle, to the beast, will he be allowed to live. So the father goes back, Belle hears the story, they all hear the story. Belle offers to be the one sister to go back to save her father's life. So then There's a lot of magical instances here. A white steed brings her to the castle, and the beast makes his appearance. He's originally quite terrified of the beast, but then she sort of gets the upper hand. Belle is not only beautiful, and she is beautiful, but she's also very intelligent. She understands the beast right away. She becomes fond of the beast. And then as the story progresses, these scenes between Belle and Libet are incredibly intense. There's a great makeup job done for John Murray playing the beast. He's also playing a double part. He's the suitor of Belle in the real life situations. And this is where the film really becomes magical in their relationship. Murray in this fantastic makeup, one of the great makeup jobs I've ever seen, a mask. And you get to see the makeup man in one of the supplements. But this is just a marvelous creation, and it only allows Murray to act through his eyes, and boy, he gives a great performance with his eyes. And his voice, he always had a kind of deep bass type voice, and they do. We learned in the supplements they do manipulate the voice a little bit to distinguish him from his alter ego. So this is really about Belle's power over the beast, the power of love, the power of understanding, and as I said, these scenes are very, very intense. The film was made or was conceived while the German occupation was still ongoing in 1944. They didn't start filming till I think August of 45, so the Germans had already fallen and Paris had been liberated, but there was no film stock hardly. Cocteau actually wanted to make this film in color. There was no color stock, but they could get black and white stock, but a lot of the film stock didn't really match. So it was a great challenge for Henri Alicon, who is the cinematographer. And in the opening scenes, the real life scenes, he wanted, Cocteau told him, look at Van Meer's paintings, that's the kind of lighting I want. Cocteau really designed this film as a kind of tributes to various or borrowings from very famous paintings. Cocteau was a painter himself. And so Alekan, and he didn't want it to be, Cocteau didn't want this film to be too pretty. He didn't want, great effects and that Alekan was prone to do. He wanted the story to unfold and the poetry of the story to unfold as we follow these characters. And the poetry would just naturally arrive. Of course, Alekan was filming this and showing his tremendous skill in lighting. He was fairly new as a cinematographer, and the music by Georges Auric is just fantastic. When Belle first enters the castle, or when she walks around, and this castle also is a great design. Christian Berard did the production design, and so when Belle goes up and down the corridors, she's sometimes gliding on air, but she's also doing it to the kind of celestial choir of the music that Auric had composed. And so these are great. These are like powerhouse collaborators for Cocteau. Auric and Alicon would go on to film some great films. They even did several English language films. In fact, Auric and Alicon both participated or they composed and shot. It was a Roman Holiday, the William Wyler movie. Audrey Hepburn debut. So the Cocteau's career is interesting because he was everything. When it came to arts, he was everything. He was a poet, he was a sculptor, he was a filmmaker. In 1930, he made his first film, Blood of the Poet, which I've never seen but is on the Criterion Channel. The brothers wanted to check it out. Then he became a playwright, a very popular playwright. His plays were translated and performed in the United States, and he was a sculptor. What else? I mean, anything you can pretty much think of in the arts, Cocteau had his hand in. He's probably going to be remembered for his movies today, and his screenplays, because he wrote screenplays for Robert Bresson, and Jean-Pierre Melville directed one of his screenplays, and there were a few more. And when the occupation began, it was really hard to stage plays. Jean Marais was appearing in Cocteau's plays. He had become a big star. He was Cocteau's lover, and Jean Marais wanted to become a movie star. So it was hard to get movies made too, but the German censors didn't object much to historical films, or in the case of Beauty and the Beast, not only historical, but a well-known fairy tale. So, and Cocteau had written a couple of movies that he didn't direct. So this is the first of his films after Blood of the Poet, and he was worried about the technical challenge. There's a particular sequence that was very tricky, and so Cocteau had become friends with René Clement, who had made a couple films, and Cocteau was very impressed. So he thought he was a jinx on these technical shots, that the magic, because obviously all these are practical effects, and they're a wow. And so Cocteau said, I can't, I'm jinxing all this. I don't know what I'm doing here. And Clement was brought on board, and he stayed throughout the film to assist, and he actually shot one of the great scenes in the film. So the mask is fantastic. The Beast is fantastic. I mean, this is I didn't write down the name of the man who did all the makeup effects, but he was fantastic. And so on the channel, we get one of the two commentaries. There's two commentaries on the physical release. But there's two on the physical release. There's only the commentary with Arthur Knight on the channel that you can listen to, and it's worth listening to. You love this movie, you gotta listen to Arthur Knight. Arthur Knight, that rang a bell. And back in the mid-60s, when I first started my interest in movies, there was hardly any literature on movies at all. This was well before the late 60s, early 70s, when academia discovered movies and film studies became a thing. So there was very little to read about the history of the movies, but Arthur Knight was, I think, the first history book I ever picked up. The Living Art, I think the book was called. It wasn't all that thick, but it was my introduction to the history of the movies, which I was just eager to learn about. And he was a film critic, a film professor, I think, at UCLA, and it's a great commentary. And he died in 1991, so I'm guessing that this commentary was for the. I know Beauty and the Beast was a Criterion Laserdisc, so I believe this is for the original edition of Beauty and the Beast with Criterion. And there's a bunch of other supplements. We see the cinematographer Henri Alecken revisiting some of the sites, and I always love these kind of supplements where the cinematographer goes back and looks, because they filmed in two different locations. Belle's home was just a great, they used the facade of it. So and some memorable scenes were filmed there, and we see Alekin as he says, "This is where we shot this," and then they show you back and forth the pictures. Same way with the Beast Castle, we also see that. We also see Alekin walking through the exteriors, and this was a film that meant a lot to a lot of people. The reception originally wasn't very good. It played at the Cannes Film Festival to disappointment, but then they showed it, when it went into general release. It became a big hit. It won all the awards. I don't think they had the Caesar Awards in those days, but it won the equivalent of Best Picture. It became an international sensation. It played in the United States in the post-war era. I can't remember now what year it finally came to America, but Cocteau was somewhat forgotten today, but in his time, he was a huge celebrity. And Beauty and the Beast is probably the one movie, if you want to see a Cocteau movie, because this is just a great adaptation of a fairy tale that's enchanted people for centuries. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.